Welcome back. You're watching Prime Property. I'm Nantara Rai. In Delhi's satellite city of Noida, thousands of home buyers are protesting against builders, alleging they are being forced to sign NOCs for completion certificates and claim builders are unilaterally raising an extra demand for possession. That's after years of uncertainty. First, there was farmer agitation against land acquisition, the fear of project cancellation that reached all the way to the Supreme Court. That was followed by a ban of the National Green Tribunal lasting 2 years. This weekend, these buyers are getting together to protest against builders allegedly forcing NOCs for completion certificates and hiking maintenance fees, etc. We get your legal perspective. What are your rights? What are the buyers' rights? Should they accept partial occupancy certificates that are being offered by the builders?
Nantara, one thing you will need to understand is that various statutes between Noida, Gurgaon, Delhi have a different concept of occupation and completion certificate. Some of them actually read this as being, synonymous with each other. An occupation certificate could be a completion certificate as well. However, in Noida, per se, there seems to be a difference between the two. And a completion certificate is something that is going to be applied for based upon the architect's report under his signature. Once the building has been built in accordance with the various regulations, the sanction plan, and you've got, the electrification, you've got the sanitary works, the plumbing, the drainage, all of that is in place, then you apply for the completion certificate. Based on that, the authorities are supposed to conduct an inspection of the premises, and thereafter they give an occupation certificate. Only once the occupation certificate is given are the residents allowed to actually take over possession and start staying there, because if they don't have an occupancy certificate in place, then it becomes a very risky affair.
So, Vaibhav, what should all of these buyers do that are being offered these partial occupancy certificates?
They need to see it. If there is a concept of a partial occupation certificate as well, that can be given by the authorities under the signature of the CEO of the Noida Authority. However, in the partial occupation certificate, the authority is going to list out its objections as to why it is not giving a complete occupation certificate. The builder would be required to rectify the objections within 6 months of it being issued. And if it is not done, then the authorities are empowered to actually take action against the project as well as the builder and the architect, etc. So until and unless there is complete clarity and you see the document which says that there is an occupation certificate and or a partial occupation certificate, do not take possession.
Vaibhav, my next question to you is, one of the many queries that we've actually received. What is the worst that can happen for a consumer if he or she were to move in on the basis of a partial occupancy certificate, and obviously that's in the absence of a full occupancy certificate and a completion certificate? Well,
a couple of things. So in case the builder concerned is not able to get the occupation certificate at all, right? And there are objections which are not being met, then the authorities are empowered actually to break down the building. Forget the actions they can take against the builder, but from the allottee perspective, it can be pretty damaging, because maybe the occupation certificate is not being given because there's a violation of the building norms or violation of the FAR guidelines, or the sanitary work or the plumbing is not in place, or there is no fire permit that has been taken, or an NOC, or whatever be the case. These are critical issues. And then the authorities for the larger public good or public safety may actually, evacuate the premises. They may break down the premises. It can get quite nasty.
Besides this, buyers are saying that other big grievance is that builders are unilaterally, or rather alleging that builders are unilaterally increasing maintenance fees, that they're demanding an extra demand for handing over possession. If that is indeed the case, what are the buyers' legal options?
So don't confuse the two issues. I think the fact that these costs are being palmed off on the consumers, and my prima facie reading of the judgments did not indicate that the builders were entitled to do that. That was supposed to be their penalty, really. Then the consumers can go ahead and challenge that the newer demands before the consumer forum, also before the civil court, if they so wish. Because that's not part of what had been agreed to initially, and they cannot be, these costs cannot be palmed off to them for the negligence of the builder. That's number one. Number two, as far as a lack of completion certificate is concerned, that is a cause that needs to be taken up, whether with the Noida authorities Or if the Noida authorities are not reacting, then you file a writ petition before the concerned High Court, which would probably be the Allahabad High Court. Or you can also make it an issue before the Consumer Forum, because that, as a consumer, you're entitled to. You're entitled to insist that the premises be given to you in accordance with law, as has been agreed upon and as is the, the mandate of the provisions involved.
But what, according to you, would be the best legal option?
Go to the Consumer Forum. I think it's, if you're looking at a one-stop, which could kind of grapple with all these issues together, I think it would be going to the Consumer Forum. I'm not too sure, however, that it would be the end of all matters. I think it is the safest bet, the quickest bet, but you may have to do more than just be able to go to the Consumer Forum, because if the developer turns around and says that, come what may, I'm not going to be able to get an occupation certificate because there are these violations which I'm not going to rectify, then frankly the Consumer Forum can also do little. You may have to make it a much more serious issue, and you may have to kind of elevate the dispute in that case.
But Vaibhav, it takes years to get a judgment, and the losing party invariably appeals at a higher court. So, isn't the buyer once again holding the shorter end of the stick?
I can't argue with you on that one. I mean, it is a fact. They are getting the short end of the stick. They have been getting the short end of the stick for quite some time. Finally, at least they are, beginning to realize what their rights are and are fighting for it. Yes, the consumer forums also are not, as quick as they are required to be or mandated to be under law. In fact, I'm not too sure whether you know that they're supposed to pass their verdicts within 6 months as per the Consumer Protection Act. I don't think that ever happens. But what do? You will have to raise the issue, and you'll have to fight it out and hope that you get compensated adequately.
And since so many of the grievances are common, will it be advisable for consumers across projects in Greater Noida and Noida to join hands and together approach court?
So as far as certain petitions are concerned, say the question of the regulations, etc., they can be done, with all consumers kind of coming together, right? The larger macro issues. But the micro issues would be project specific. And each project would have to fight it on its own footing, because the factual scenarios would be different. There's this principle of representative capacity suits, where one person can kind of represent a whole bunch of people, but that only happens where all the causes are exactly the same. They can be kind of bucketed together. And please understand that the opposite side is going to take every possible and impossible technical objection possible. So you may land up with a situation where you're trying to fight as a group, but you get tripped because of certain technicalities. I would say, therefore, go project to project. If there are individuals who are not being able to kind of group together, go individually and fight it out, because you will need to fight it out. I reiterate that you cannot sit back on your rights. You will not be given the due, what you're due otherwise.
That's Vaibhav Gaggar's advice for you. Don't move in with just a partial occupancy certificate unless the builder gets a completion certificate. And if you feel your rights are being breached, get together, move to consumer court. With that, we're going to take a short break. On the other side, we'll head down to Chennai and tell you how builders are planning heavy discounts to bring buyers back into the market. Stay tuned.